All right, I think we're on. Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Mount Vernon Special City Council meeting for June 24, 2020 to order. The time is now 6:01. We'll start with a roll call of council members. I'll do this slow so you can answer. All right, let's start with Council Member Richard Brocksmith.
Here.
Council Member Iris Carrillas. Council Member Mary Hudson.
Here.
Council Member Mark Hulst.
Here.
Council Member Melissa Beaton.
Here.
Council Member Gary Molinar.
Here.
And Council Member Aaron Moberg.
Here.
All right. Thank you. Under our consent agenda tonight, we have items A, B, C, and D. They are study session minutes, regular council meeting minutes, payroll checks, wire transfers, and claims.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. Motion by Mark and a second by Mary. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Under reports tonight, we have our standing review of emails from the public, where all public comments are to be sent to the council at mountVernonWA.gov. I received no comments, just double checking that council did not either via that email address. Okay. Then moving on, under new business, item A tonight is the 2020 surplus equipment item, and Gary Owens from our shop is here to present, and I'm going to turn it over to Gary. Gary, could you go ahead and unmute yourself? There you go. Thanks.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Staff recommends City Council to approve a resolution for the sale and surplus of city vehicles and equipment. We, the staff, have determined that the certain vehicles and equipment have exceeded the lifespan and are no longer usable to any of the city departments. We currently have 25 vehicles and 6 pieces of equipment on your list for surplus. Police Department has 12 vehicles and 2 radar trailers. Fiber Optic has 2 vehicles. Wastewater has 3 vehicles and 1 Ford tractor. Fire Department has 1 vehicle, their air rescue unit. Street Department has 1 vehicle, a 10-yard GMC dump truck, and a Vermeer wood chipper. IS Department has 1 vehicle. Equipment Rental has 1 vehicle. Surface Water, 1 vehicle, Elgin sweeper. Parks Department has 3 vehicles and 2 utility trailers. Staff is requesting council to approve this resolution authorizing the surplus of 31 pieces of equipment to be sold at auction.
All right. I know council got a detailed list of equipment. Is there any questions for Gary?
I have no specific questions for Gary other than that I believe this is the first time he's appeared on Zoom. And Gary, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Gary, are these going to be an auction that's held in one of our yards, or are we hiring an outside company to do the auction?
This will be Murphy's Auto Auction in Woodinville. That's who's done it the last several years for us. They do a really good job. And as you look on this list, you'll see there's a lot of old vehicles on here. Some are 35 years old. So,
yeah, I noticed that. But thanks for the information.
Any other questions from our council?
I was curious about the radar trailers and if they have some value to speed deterrence as is, or we just have so many other ones we don't need more than a couple.
these radar trailers are old radar units.
Mm-hmm.
One has been damaged and the software, we can no longer get parts for that one. So they're both currently out of service and have been replaced with 2 replacements at this time.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary?
I would move
to approve. I'll go ahead, Mary.
Oh, you go. Okay, I would move to approve the resolution authorizing the surplus of city vehicles and equipment.
Second.
Okay, so a motion by Mary, and a second by Gary, and that's resolution 977. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right,
you.
thanks, Gary. painless. All right, item B tonight is the approval of an agreement with Skagit County and the City of Anacortes for fiber installation. And our Information Services Director, Kim Kleppe, is here. Kim.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm asking for your consideration on a three-way agreement with the Skagit County and the City of Anacortes. What this agreement will do allow our infrastructure, the City of Mount Vernon Fiber, connect to Anacortes' infrastructure through the Anacortes Water Treatment Plant. Anacortes has already installed fiber from the City of Anacortes to the water treatment plant, and this will be like an installation from Freeway Drive, where we have our fiber at Freeway right by Blades, on out to the treatment plant, about 8,000 to 9,000 feet. And this will basically put an extension cord to connect our infrastructures together.
Okay.
And the cost will be split between the City of Anacortes, Skagit County, and the City of Mount Vernon.
All right, any questions for Kim on this? I like the analogy of the extension cord. Makes sense.
So other than our part, the additional costs for this project are being covered by Skagit County and Anacortes fully, right?
Correct.
I'd move approval of the interlocal agreement with Anacortes and Skagit County.
Second.
All right, motion by Mark. I think I saw Melissa second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kim. Item C tonight is a CDBG subrecipient agreement with EDASC, and Peter Donovan, our project development manager, is here. Peter?
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Kind of a fun one tonight. You'll remember at your May 13th meeting, City Council approved the city's 2020 CDBG annual action plan. That action plan is a list of how the city allocates over $600,000 in federal funding to Mount Vernon agencies and businesses and households who need support right now. One of the items you approved was $110,000 for COVID relief funding to small businesses in Mount Vernon. And before you tonight is the subrecipient agreement with the Economic Development Alliance of Skagit County, or EDASC. And the agreement simply clarifies the scope of work in which EDASC will be assisting the city, which is going to be in implementing the application process for small businesses who have been impacted by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The agreement sets the amount of CDBG funding, which again is $110,000 that comes from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It then passes through the City of Mount Vernon, in this case onto EDASC, and then finally to the folks who need it the most, are Mount Vernon businesses. So this is an outstanding way to provide a boost for our local business community, and staff is happy to recommend that Council authorize the mayor to enter into this subrecipient agreement with EDASC.
All right, any questions for Peter on this particular item?
Peter, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you happen to know, by the time this gets to EDASC, in terms of from there to the small businesses, how cumbersome is this going to be? Are we going to be able to get that money to those small businesses quickly, or is it just going to be, they're going to look at the stack of papers that they have to fill out? And how easy is it going to be to get this to where it needs to go as soon as we can?
That's a really good question. There are some hoops that businesses need to jump through for this federal funding, but really compared to other grants and other federal funding, it's really limited. There's not a lot that needs to be done. Let me share the timeline with you briefly. We've had the application process out. It closed yesterday evening. We have a number of applications in that we're reviewing right now, and we're going to be meeting. There will be a committee that looks over them, just ensures everyone's qualifications and that everyone meets the criteria. We'll be calculating the scores toward the end of next week, and then a notification of awards by July 6th. The contract and the payout will be the following week. So we're talking second week of July.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, could you talk a little about the committee, because it's not any of us for very specific reasons that EDASC
right.
is, okay.
Good point. So the committee that's being put together will include the Downtown Business Association, the Mount Vernon Chamber of Commerce, EDASC will of course be on that board as well, and possibly some other members of the business community.
Okay, any questions for Peter about this?
I would just reiterate that these are micro enterprise loans, and the way that HUD defines that there are 5 or fewer employees. So there's a number of other funding sources for other sort of larger and medium-sized businesses. This specifically targets the smaller businesses in the city of Mount Vernon.
The only question I would have for Peter is because we're trying to focus on local small businesses in Mount Vernon, how were these businesses notified that this grant was available?
Well, there are a number of sources of communication that went out from EDASC. There were press releases through the Chamber of Commerce, through EDASC's mailing list, from the Mount Vernon Downtown Association. The city reached out to the business community as well, and I know it was in the newspaper, local newspaper as well. So we did our best to get it into everyone's hands that might possibly qualify, as we wanted the deepest pool that we could to choose from.
All right, thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Mary?
Actually, I just want to say I think the timeline sounds really great. I mean, it's nice to see that it's going to happen pretty fast. So I would like to move for approval of the agreement with EDASC on this.
Okay. Motion by Mary and a second by Iris. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you so much. That'll be really great to be able to get that out. And as soon as the committee makes their recommendations, I'm sure Peter will be back talking about that too. So, okay. All right, item D tonight is for the good of the order. So we've got several updates since the Open Public Meetings Act executive order from the governor was extended and we can't meet in person. I kind of felt like you haven't heard from a few of the departments, so I've invited directors tonight to give those updates to you. And so we have a whole bunch of slides, so I'll be screen sharing. Before we launch into that though, Kevin and Chief Kamek and our office have been keeping tabs on the governor's proclamation around face coverings. And I think it was 4 o'clock today, they got the order. So I asked Kevin if you would give a quick synopsis of the interpretation of that order, and then Chief Kamek to just talk briefly about questions I'm sure many of our communities wondering about how this is going to go as far as enforcement or education. So Kevin.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. As you know, Governor Inslee had a press conference and he let the public know of his intention to have the state issue an order making it mandatory to provide or put on cloth face coverings in certain circumstances. The order was to come out through the Secretary of Health, and that order was released to the public and is available on the website of the Department of Health around 4 o'clock today. I've reviewed the order since that time quickly. Just a couple things worthy of note is that there are a laundry list of exceptions to the order that allow people to remove their face coverings or exempt them from requiring to wear a face covering in public. Some of those include if you are in an outdoor public area, provided that a distance of at least 6 feet is maintained from non-household members. It is not required categorically to put those face coverings on. Any children under 5 years old is categorically exempt. Engaging in exercise activities, walking, hiking, bicycling, running, provided that your social distancing of 6 feet is maintained from non-household members. There are many other exceptions here that we will be working through with law enforcement to provide training. There is no expiration date set in time for this order. That's noteworthy. It will take a further order to rescind or supersede this, so there's no sunset provision to this. Interpret that as what you will, if that is a sign of it being a order of long-term standing or not. We're used to seeing these orders having a set expiration date. And the only other thing worthy of note is that this is an order of the Secretary of Health pursuant to state law, including Chapter 4370 and 7005. Those are statutes that we have not adopted into our own municipal code, which does not mean that we cannot enforce it. Law enforcement is fully commissioned and can enforce such orders. However, it does mean that the jurisdiction in terms of prosecution remains with the county unless or until the council would to decide to adopt those statutes by reference into your own municipal code.
Okay, and then if anyone has questions for Kevin, or if Chief Kamick wants to just make a couple comments about it as well.
Yeah, just in relation to how our approach will be with this is as Kevin's outlined, this thing's new and it's fluid, and I guess it's important to remember that this is a public health and safety measure first. And anytime we acquire new laws or ordinances, no matter which spectrum it comes from, we always try to do an awareness and education campaign first, and that would be the approach here as well. There's circumstances where individuals can, be maskless, as Kevin outlined, and then there's certain circumstances, define that they will. And I think the governor's language that I read in there was willful, and so. I think for us to be looking at enforcement actions on this, especially where it's a misdemeanor, we'd be looking strongly at the willful aspect of it, and really wanting it to be the exception rather than the norm. So as we understand better from the city attorney's office that direction, that'll be our approach, which is to really seek voluntary compliance.
Any questions from City Council? I think approaching this like we have all along, if this is very much an educational piece. So any questions?
No,
Mark.
my hopes would be that we would look at this as an educational idea. Sorry,
Okay.
button got a little carried away. My hopes are we'd look at this as an educational program and not necessarily a criminal program. There's a lot of things that have gone on recently, and I think that criminalizing behavior such as not wearing a mask may be a little excessive. So I'm hopeful that we will look at it as an opportunity to just give the public some education.
Agreed.
Some of the things that we're going to continue to do is the mayor's e-newsletter on our TV 10 scrolling. We have purchased, I think they're on the solid waste trucks already. If not, they're on order. Oh, they are. Okay. Thanks, Esco. It's just billboard, and I think it's just wearing is caring. So we'll do it what we can from a city's perspective to just get that education out there. And if anyone has any ideas, let us know too.
Can I ask if there is willful non-compliance, can you tell us what the penalties would be?
The misdemeanor, 90 days in jail, $1,000 fine, or both.
And just to clarify, we talked a lot about outdoors and social distancing. What are the rules on indoor mask wearing? Is already a requirement for business owners and staff, I believe, but as far as other folks indoors?
There is a general rule to wear a mask when you are inside a building, including but not limited to any business that is open to the public. And then there are exceptions to that as well. This is available now online. There is some Department of Health guidelines and pamphlets as well that prescribe when you are indoors, when it's not necessary to have your mask on. And it is multiple exemptions that you would have to navigate through, which I think the Department of Health in their guidelines did a pretty good job of sharing. But typically, if you're in line waiting for the bus, if you're riding in a taxi and you're ride sharing, and it's not a household member, you know, if doing mass transit, you need to wear a mask. Um, if you can't social distance at least 6 feet and you're in a park, at a trail, on a street, you should wear a mask. Um, if you're in a healthcare setting, you should be wearing a mask unless there's a medical condition that suggests that you shouldn't. Um, that's how I'm reading the order, but I do have to say I just got this at 4 o'clock, so I'm actually just reading it verbatim to you as we speak. Haven't given it much more thought than that at this point.
I just sent a link via email to council if you want to see it. So
Yeah.
that'd be helpful.
Anybody who does have questions, this is an order of the Secretary of Health, so the Department of the Health would be the agency that should be interpreting it, because that's where the court would give them some weight since it's coming out of their department.
I got a quick question. There was no timeline on this at all, and it has nothing to do with what page you're in.
Correct.
Yep.
This order takes effect on June 26th and remains in effect until rescinded or superseded by a subsequent order of the Secretary of Health or until the governor issues a proclamation terminating the state of emergency.
So, Kevin, I've had a couple of constituents that have reached out, and their question is pretty pointed. It's, you know, under what authority or what RCW is the governor basically able to mandate these kind of things along with the quarantines and everything else? There's at least several folks have emailed me, and I really don't have an answer for them.
If you look at the orders as written, they actually do cite to the authority being relied on. And there is state statute that provides emergency powers that are fairly broad to both the governor and the Secretary of Health to combat specifically contagious or infectious disease emergencies. Chapters 4370 and 7005 in your revised Code of Washington are ones that directly address that. It includes their ability to even quarantine you in a house or a place without your consent. There's a process to it, and a due process issue. You have a right to appeal it. But they're very broad.
Can I just, thanks for all that explanation and how we're going to be moving forward. You know, we were able to, as a state, really flatten the curve under the quarantine. And now that we are moving towards phase 2, phase 3 in our communities, we're seeing a pretty significant increase in cases. And I think it just kind of reinforces that we need to all take personal responsibility to cover our faces when we're not able to social distance. And it's not just about any individual, right? It's about the community. And I'd specifically point to the ability to keep opening up gradually. If we are not able to keep the spread of the virus under control, we're not going to be able to continue down the path of opening back up and getting our businesses back up and running. So it's not just personal safety or your community safety. This is about our economic recovery. So I sure hope that everybody will take this very seriously. I know we all do. So just wanted to make that crystal clear. I know from my perspective, but I think from all of our perspectives.
I totally agree with you, Richard. I don't want to see us go backwards, and that's what my fear is that if we keep going the way the stats are going, we're not going to move anywhere else. And I worry about our small businesses having to maybe go backwards a little bit, and that would be just devastating to them and to everybody. So I just hope people understand this is really it's just being a kind person, and in a very broad sense. You're taking care of others, you're caring about others, not just yourself.
I do have a question. When we see gatherings going on, do we have to report it? Because I know when we passed phase 2, we were allowed to be engaged maybe 5 people, I think, at the most. But the last weekend, I saw a few celebrations for graduation. and it was not just 5 people, it was more than 20 people. And there is a place we can, or it's okay for us to tell them that's not okay to do it, or how we can address situations like that. Because I heard also in the community, there is many, at least as far as I know, 2 or 3 big wedding celebration is going to happen soon. Then what is our position as a citizen in the community? Because what Richard and Mary said, this is very a concern when we see those events happen in the community. What is the right approach we have to take?
So we've fielded calls and complaints just like you're describing, and the governor's office has taken ones like you've described and localized that anyway. So you could certainly call 911 or prefer their business line. They both ring to the same, and then depending on which agency or jurisdiction you're in, it would go to their their law enforcement agency, and then it would just be responded to and reviewed and evaluated, based on the circumstances that are there and what the practices are. And, is there, is the group size, but they're distanced, are there protective coverings? All of the factors would be weighed out. And, at a probably a minimum, there would be, meeting with whoever the organizers are and, reminding them or encouraging them or asking them and stuff like that about their compliance with it, and then try to accomplish it that way.
Okay, thank you.
There are some frequently asked questions that the Department of Health on their website, www.doh.wa.gov, has already provided to the public. And one in particular is related to your question, and it was, what should I do if I see someone not wearing a face covering? And their response is nothing. Some people may have conditions or circumstances that would make wearing a cloth face covering difficult or dangerous. Just wear your face covering and stay 6 feet away.
Okay.
I just want to chime in on both what Richard and Mary said. I was briefed Monday at the county level, and they were sitting at, I think, a little over 22 positive tests. And the cutoff is this Friday. And if we can't stay under 25, we can't petition to move forward. And that's probably going to take us about a week. And so, I can't say it enough how important these masks are. We're not doing ourselves any favor if we don't all take a part in this. And so please consider continuing to wear those masks, because we're all in this together. And just as well, it wasn't easy to get to phase 2, but it's a lot easier, it seems like, to go backwards. And I really don't want to see us go backwards.
Okay, we have Chief Bryce here, and so I'll just ask him to give a quick update. He's part of the Unified Command, as you know, and so I think he may have some information on just the numbers you referenced, Melissa, which you're exactly right. We're pushing the envelope on that. So, Chief Bryce.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I think the council member really kind of hit it right on the nose. So just kind of an update is right now, as of the June 22nd, a couple days ago, our value was 23.2 per 100,000. The threshold, as Councilmember Beaton said, was 25. So we're right at that line. And we're trending so that we anticipate that on Friday, we'll be at 27.9 cases. We'll be over the 25. One of the other key metrics too is the percentage of individuals testing positive for COVID during the past week. We're supposed to be under 2%. We're sitting currently, as of 2 days ago, at 1.9%. So we're on the threshold of all of those metrics. There is a Board of Health meeting on Friday to discuss the application for phase 3. It's our view, and it's what we're anticipating, is that we will not be hitting the metric numbers come Friday. The last several days, we've had 5, 6 positive cases. So that'll roll into the 6-day delay that will add to those numbers by the time our application would be sent off. Now, that doesn't mean that we necessarily go backwards and revert back to a phase 1, but it just might preclude us from getting to that phase 3 stance. And I think that's why, in the context of the order and the masking, it's really kind of critical for everybody to realize that when we applied for phase 2, our number was 4.6 cases over that last 14-day rolling period, and now it's up to 23. So whether it's the phase change, whether it is, I think, as Councilmember Caress was stating, that it's graduations, weddings, Memorial Day gatherings, a laxing of things that's causing this. You know, there's no one piece of that, but the masking, the 6 feet, social distancing are the things that are going to help us stay at that level, help bring it down. As a side note too, we've been seeing a huge increase in the number of folks coming for testing, which is it's a good thing, because there's a ratio between the number of tests we have to have and positive, so that we make sure that we are doing that appropriately. Just today, we tested 300 folks at the test site. Last week, we tested 1,076 folks at our testing site. So there's still the desire out there. There's still the folks coming through. I think that's a real positive. We need to keep enforcing that, getting that message out there that we're available for that, so we can get those folks into quarantine quicker and slow that spread back down. With that, any questions I can answer with regards to the metrics or the process for application?
I do have a question, Chief. I know that CMAR started doing some testing, I believe, this week. Will those numbers be folded into the numbers from the county site?
It goes back to if they're a county resident. So again, anybody that is going to be that is registered, has a mailing address here in the county, those statistics count. So as an example, even the test site, when, you know, the fact that we tested 300, there's still large numbers that are coming from outside the county. So if they test positive, they go back to that county and count against their numbers. And the same thing counts then for the number of tests we've had within the county. So it's a give and take on that. Just kind of a follow-up to that, we're going to be talking with Whatcom County too about trying to get a more regionalized approach maybe to some of this, so that we keep our resources fresh and available, so we don't burn folks out and have a duplication too much of some of that effort.
Any other questions for Chief Bryce? Okay. All right, then moving on, we'll have our revenue update, and that is our Finance Director, Doug Voleski, and I will share the screen and show you some slides from him. Okay, Doug?
Hey, all right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. So tonight I thought I'd just give you an update on where we are in our revenues, and kind of talk a little bit about sales tax in more detail, but I'll get into that in a little bit here. So first of all, just moving on with our sales tax, we did receive our June payment, and if you look at the bottom right-hand side there, it shows that the June for 2020 actuals was $580,000. So that number was, again, that's for our April collection, which we would anticipate would have been pretty low. So I'm pleased that that amount is as high as it is. That's about a 10% reduction from last June in 2019's, or $68,000 less than what we collected last June. So on the upper left there, so we're right now at a total of $3.5 million. We're about 258 below our budget collection. And again, that number is pretty variable because it's based on when collections normally came in last year. So that's going to be kind of an iffy thing this year. So we're right now about 6.78% below our budgeted amount, and we've collected about 45%. So again, that 6.78%, we had projected in our, when we started this, that we were going to be about 30% below. So we're still below that, and you know, it's who knows what's going to happen in the future and in that last quarter. I know there's a a lot to see there. But right now, at least this number is looking positive, more positive than I was expecting, and which makes me pretty happy.
Doug, can I ask? So that's good news. Thank you. When we estimated that we would be $5.5 million in a hole a couple of months ago, based on different revenues and the projected reductions that we would expect, and you mentioned the 30% in sales tax, how many months did you project that out? And I'm asking because it sure seems like this is going to be a longer event than we expected. And I'm curious, not just 1 month's estimates, but how many months, if you get the question.
Well, for the full year, we projected it out for the full year. So all of 2020, that's what that 30% was.
That we would be 30% under for each month from April, May, all the way through December? The
total collections for the year would be 30% under.
Collections for the year. Okay, so it's not a month figure, it's the cumulative of the year.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So far, what the projections were by month, we have been over all of them that we had. Right now, in fact, we would have to be collecting for the rest of the year just about $300,000 each month to be about at that 30%, if that helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's hope we stay on this path. Thank you.
Any other?
Sorry. No, I was saying, I'll talk a little bit more about sales tax in a minute here if there's any other questions. Okay, moving on to property tax. Again, same here. If you look at the bottom right there for 2020 actuals for June, we collected about $326,000. As you guys all know, we do receive mainly our big collections in May and November, and then the rest of them just kind of come in as people turn in. This is normally a little higher month. So as you can see there, last year we brought in $332,000, and this year $326,000. And then on the upper left there, we're about $80,000 below our total projected income coming in. And again, this is only for the general fund. As you know, our property tax gets split between parks and library also. So we're below about just under 3%. And again, when we were doing our projections on this, we were estimating, and just depending on how things are going to be going here, that people will be filing their taxes later or whatever, that we were projecting about a 10% reduction throughout the year. So at the end of the year. So, and right now we're at just under 3%. As you see on the graph there, we're just hanging in there right on the very edge of where we were hoping to be right now. Any questions on that one? Okay. And then TBD. So of course, this one's going to be very similar to our sales tax. This month, for the month of June, we brought in $136,000. And again, that was about 10% below what we brought in last year in June. And on the upper left there, so in total, we brought in $834,000 so far this year, about $45,000 or 5% below of what our budgeted projections are. And again, this one we also had estimated at the year end that we'd be about 30% below. And then the last one before I get into sales tax is our REIT. We started out very strong in this year. In January, if you can see there on the bottom right, we brought in $196,000 in 1 month. Since then, it's been kind of up and down. This month, for the month of June, we brought in $82,000, which was about $95,000 below what we brought in last June, which was a very high month also. Overall, though, we're still sitting above where we our budgeted amount. We're about 8.67% over our budget amount this time. So that is good. So with our REIT right now, and as you remember, our budget last year was 1.6. and we came in a little under that. So our budget, we lowered to 1.4 million. And so assuming where we are right now at that 1.4, we've collected about 47% of that. Any questions on REIT? And that's both REIT 1 and 2 combined.
I think it would be good for the public to understand that real estate excise tax is committed funds that either goes to capital projects or to road projects. That's not something that goes into our general fund.
That's correct. Yeah, we can't. They are designated only for capital projects or street projects. That's correct. All right. So I know you can't see this, but I just wanted to you have this in your council file. I sent that spreadsheet, and one of the things oh, it's all right.
I hit something wrong.
Mary, you're making me dizzy here.
I know, I apologize.
So if you open up that file that you have when you guys are just really bored and have absolutely nothing to do and want some really exciting reading, Council Member Hulse had asked about breaking out some of our sales tax revenues. So what I did, and this is just part of the spreadsheet, I have all of last year's in there by month also. You can open up those columns, but this is all broken down by the NAICS code. That's the North American Industry Classification System. And this is how the Department of Revenue, every business that collects revenues has to be classified within one of these NAICS codes. So what I did is I went through each month, I got a report from the Department of Revenue, and I broke it out by those codes, something for you to look at. And just one thing I just want to point out from here is as you look down, I know you can't really see it here, but there's that code 44 and 45, the retail. It's about, I don't know, 7 down from the upper left there. Yeah, 7. Anyway, that one is about 56% of our total revenue that we normally collect. So I broke that one down further into that green section down below. So that's what that green section is. It's just a breakdown of that. So just if you have some time and want to take a look at that, and there's a lot of information in there by those codes, and you have any questions, let me know. And then just to kind of sum it up, there's also on that same spreadsheet, if you look, there's 2 tabs. The first tab is this one, and then the second tab are all these graphs I'm just going to share with you right now. There's more graphs in there than what I'm going to discuss right now, but so that's just there for you to look at. So this first one here is just our total sales tax. And as you can see there on the upper portion, in 2020, in June, we just collected that $580,000. I don't know if you can see way on the right, I can't on my screen here, but there is a totals to date there. And we've collected about $3.5 million. And the average of the last 6 years that we're in here is about $3.3 million. So you'll be able to see that. And then the graph there, that green line is our 2020 total sales tax revenues that have come in. You can see we started out in that, like February, we just kind of went gangbusters there. And then after February, things have just kind of deteriorated, but they have picked up again here. So anyway, that's just the overall picture of sales tax. So if we look at the next slide here, I just broke out some of the bigger categories that are in that list that you'll look at. And so this is construction. And so for construction is about 10.48% of our total collected revenue to date. And as you can see there, again, on the furthest right column there, the total to date last year was $533,000, and this year we're at $371,000. So you can see there that construction has taken a hit, and so this is one of the categories that I saw that that really has affected our revenue stream. The next one I have is wholesale trade. And this is about 7.7% of our total revenue received to date. On this one, we're about even. Our total last year was $277,000 at this point, and we're at $273,000 at this month here. So again, that February we really had a great month in February, and then things kind of dropped and are kind of leveling off now, more consistent to where we were last year at this point anyway. The other thing I wanted to point out in all these here, you know, we had talked about previously how our online sales tax and stuff is coming in. All of that is, again, categorized by these codes, so they're intermingled amongst all of them. But if you can go through and even look just at more detail on just some of those big ones that we're at, there's like between our third and fifth revenue estimate in sales is coming from online sales, so that's pretty good. And then the next one is information, and that's about 3.48% of our total revenue. And we're actually above where we were last year at this point. Last year, through the first 6 months, we were at 112,000, and this year we're at 123. Moving on to accommodation and food services. Again, this is our hotels and our restaurants. We are down here. We were at $312,000 last year at this time, and we are down to 267. So about $45,000 less overall in the first 6 months. So obviously, it's, you know, we're still collecting some. There were a lot of sales still going on with takeout, but we did see a reduction overall so far of about $45,000. And then the next one is retail trade. This is that largest category I was talking about earlier, and so right now it's about 55.7% of our total sales tax revenue. And we are about right where we were last year at this time, leveling out. Last year, the first 6 months, we were at 1.98, and this year we're at 1.975. So over almost a $2 million collection so far. We're about $5,000 less under where we were last year at this time. So just some interesting there. I thought that was pretty exciting to see. Now, the rest of these few slides that I have here are from just that breakdown, that green section of the retail sales. And so the first one there is the motor vehicles and parts dealers. That's about 18.61% of our overall revenues. And here, that's about $8,000 less than we were last year at this point. Last year, we were at $667,000, and this year we're at $659,000. And then moving on to the next one, which is building materials and garden equipment and supplies dealers. We're actually up about $9,000 overall, and this is about 7% of our total revenue collected so far. Last year we were at $237,000, and this year we are at $246,000 for the first 6 months. And then the next one we have here is, again, in that retail trade. This is the food and beverage stores, so all the grocery stores, and that's about 4.4% of our total revenue collected. And actually, we are higher than we were at last year at the first 6 months. Last year, we were at $151,000, and this year we were about $156,000. So as you can see there, you know, we saw an incline in our May collection, and it did drop a little this month in June, but we're staying pretty consistent there. And then the last one that I was going to share is also in that retail trade category for the general merchandise stores. And this is there's a lot in here, but these are a lot of our big box stores, but and a lot of retail merchandise stores. But here again, this was about 8.5% of our total revenue collected so far. And we are above where we were last year at this point. Right now, we're about $301,000 we brought in so far in the first 6 months. And last year, the first 6 months, we were at $291,000. So I hope this information is helpful and can provide some, it was a learning experience for me and able to see a lot of this stuff. And I'll keep this up if it's something you guys want to see. If there's any questions on any of that.
I was just going to say thanks for putting that information together, Doug. I think it gives us an idea of people's habits and what we can kind of look for in the future as long as this pandemic continues on, where we can look to for our strengths and where our weaknesses will be.
Absolutely.
I think, Mark, you're exactly right. It helps us even look at what groups maybe we could target another round of maybe CDBG funding or to help those businesses. So that analysis really will help us with decisions. Okay.
All right.
Doug, do you have any, I can't remember if you had other things you were going to share.
I'm not going to share anything else. That's it.
Do you have any questions for Doug? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Development Services Department update, and that's Director Chris Phillips. And so he's on here, and I have slides for him. So I'm gonna. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Hold on. I'm gonna share my screen, and then I'll hand it over.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Next slide, Mayor. Thanks. I'll be talking to you about 3 slides that we had discussed probably close to a month ago, and then some key takeaways of what I've seen in the department here as it relates to applications and inspections and just workload in our staff. So as you can see, we have 3 decisive points. One, you've got March 23rd, which basically shut everything down. April 24th, which was phase 1 of the construction restart, and then just recently June 5th when we had the phase 2 of the construction restart. What you'll see here again is we had a lot of work that was coming inbound. It did correspond very nicely with the charts that Doug just shared with you as far as some of our revenue streams coming in. When March 23rd happened, basically everything shut down for approximately a month for our construction folks. Phase 1, just to refresh your memory there, was just anything that was permit that was issued by the city. Work had already begun. When phase 1 started, that meant that builders could go back in to start working on those projects. And then phase 2 was anything that was new construction. So, and you can see there the number of applications has, steadily increased from that bottom point there in April. And, again, we'll continue to track that. This is just showing the number of inspections. And as you saw, it's looking like a V. Most of the charts that you will see will correspond that way. Again, number of inspections dropped off significantly between the 23rd of March and the 24th, which is when, again, we took a look at workloads, looked at a variety of folks who could be furloughed for a period of time. It didn't make sense to have inspectors on board if we didn't have any inspections going on. But as we got through or post April 24th, we saw a significant increase in number of building inspections, engineering inspections, and pretty much the planning inspections are dealing with landscaping. It's kind of like the final, the icing, if you will, on the top of the cake. It's the very last inspections that go on. But what we have seen, as you can see here with the blue line, which is building, and the yellow line is just a tremendous amount of work. So we were able to, number 1, bring back Elliot Hurd a little bit earlier. He is our building inspector and plan review person. Correspondingly, at about the same time we brought him back, our building official, Mark Sniffen, suffered a stroke. So he was out for approximately a week. We have him working from home right now he's recuperating fine. Just talked to him again today. Seems, again, he's rehabilitating, and we should have him back to 100% here very shortly. And then as far as the engineering inspector, when we had Alan go on furlough for his 56 hours, we ended up bringing back John Torgerson. And you can see there, once the construction restart came about, we really have picked up on the number of inspections as it relates to the engineering field as well.
Now, this one is kind of interesting. So as you can see with the number of permits that were issued, the 23rd, again, you see a significant drop off on issued permits because we couldn't really do, or construction folks couldn't do any work. After the 24th, you can see that again, overall, you had an increase in the number of building permits, as well as overall permits. Where you see phase 2 starting, and you see a significant increase on the permits issued, was oh, pardon the phone call in the back there, was due to the number of permits that we had already worked through that were waiting to be issued. So again, until that phase 2 for that new construction going on, once we had that happen, boom, over the next week or two, we basically issued a significant number of permits at that time. And where you see everything dropping off again between week 24 and week 25, furloughs. So we've had one permit tech that has been laid off permanently. We had another one that was on furlough for her 7 days, and another one that had picked 5 days for her time over this time period, as well as our building official and our engineering manager. So you had a bunch of folks who were out that would normally do plan reviews, that would do a variety of other things over that time period. This week, we've got everybody back. And again, over the next week or two, you'll see that backlog being slowly but surely worked through. On the permit revenue, much like Doug's slides here, the one slide here, or I'm sorry, 2008 is going to be the blue line. 2019 is the green line, and the yellow line or gold line there is 2020. So you can see between months or March and April, when there was no construction going on, it pretty much plateaued that particular month. When you look between April and May, that's when the restart happened, and things are moving along briskly there. Back to basically the same slope that we were on back in 2008, which was again during the heyday of building here in Skagit County, and more importantly in Mount Vernon. For this particular month, I will let you know total what we've done, which includes impact fees. We've done, as of today, with 4 more business days to go, close to 285,000. Last month we did about 230. So just to kind of give you an idea, there is a lot of construction and activity that is going on at this particular time. And then next, so here are some of the key takeaways that I have for you. Number one, on the submitted permits, again, they've held fairly steady. They are above what our seasonal norm, so I'm able to look back, a number of years. But due to furloughs and the layoffs, again, technically, and the other part that would add to this is we're not really dealing with folks at the office. We are working with them through our FTP site, which has worked very well. But in order to work those particular permits, make sure that they are technically complete or counter complete. They've increased from usually being a day or two to now being about 10 to 12 business days. And with that is due again to the furlough and the layoffs. I would imagine over the next few months, once we've gotten all that furlough time out of the way, we'll slowly but surely get that number back to something that's I would think more reasonable, probably within the 5 to 7 workday side of the house. But again, that's all dependent upon how many permits that we do have coming in. Everybody seems to be very understanding from the development community. I haven't heard anything negative, which is down in my last part. We've been over communicating via SICPA, the chamber, Downtown Association, anybody who will listen to us. We've been trying to get the word out, let them know that we're there and or that we're still here and working things, but they're just taking a little bit longer to do. On number 2 there, the number of inspections, again, we've surpassed where we were prior to COVID. Again, we are This is a seasonal norm. It is the time to get out there and do the construction. And comparatively, we are above the year-to-year figures for that. And staff continues to utilize our building inspector contracted services. So although we have although we have Elliot back doing that work, we have required these extra services just to make sure those inspections are in there and that we do have a predictable path to completion for our development community. And again, they seem to be very receptive to that. As it relates to the issued permits, again, they significantly decreased due to what we talked about previously with having the furloughs and the folks out. But again, this works very closely hand in glove with number one above, and it's indicated again the increased workload for our permit techs as well as our managers, which again equates to increased permitting times and one would consider to be a decrease in a level of service. But again, as I want to emphasize, we have not heard anything from our development community other than good working collaborative environment. Next month, if we're still in the pandemic, we may, I've talked with Wayne from SICBA about doing a Zoom meeting for developers, seeing how many that we normally have on board there. Again, as far as utilizing the portal, reductions in paper, I mean, there's just a ton of positive things that we have not skipped a beat from the 23rd when we shut down. Quite frankly, very proud of the team and how they've served the council and the mayor, but also our developing community as well as our contractors there. So pending your questions, that's all I have for you.
Any questions for Chris?
No, I'd just like to make a comment, Chris. I had a constituent contact me last Friday evening and had a question about putting up just a garden shed in their backyard. And I told them I would send an email off to Rebecca and that I'd probably get back with him Monday or so. And I sent the email off, I don't know, about 5 o'clock in the evening, assuming everybody had gone home. And about 5:50 Friday night, I got an email back from Rebecca with the majority of the answers that we had to the question. So I just would like to recognize Rebecca for her commitment to her job and to the constituents in Mount Vernon.
Absolutely. Thank you there, Councilmember Holst. I'll let you know, we kind of run a little port and starboard. I'm usually up earlier, and because when my wife gets up, we might as well wake up the whole dang house and neighborhood. So I get in early. So I'm usually in at about 7, and then Rebecca I have coming in a little bit later in the day. There's no reason to have both of us there at the same time. And then she usually pulls an hour later in the evening. So I will definitely pass that on to Rebecca.
Okay, any other questions for Chris before we move on to the library? All right, great, thank you. All right, Isaac Huffman, our library director, is here with his library update. And so I have some slides for him too. So hold on 1 minute. Okay, Isaac, take it away.
All right. So thank you all for having a quick little time for a library update. I won't spend too much time here on the first slide. Next slide, please. All right, we'll talk a little bit about curbside. We started curbside June 12th, and on the first day we had 658 requests that we were able to fill. So that was a large number of curbside requests that we were getting. In comparison, we've seen in Skagit Valley Herald that other libraries had like 50 items pending. So, it's a big number. 1 week in, we hit 208 requests. And then yesterday was 286 requests that we received overall. Our total average for the time, because we do have sort of an ebb and flow from day of the week, is over 300 items, 302 items that we're getting put on hold each day. That equates to about 152 different customers for materials oftentimes. So it's kind of where that is coming from. Next item. Part of that has to do with our good press that we've been doing about that. You may have seen this ad that the foundation paid for in the Skagit Valley Herald. It has been really good to get the word out, and people are really connecting with the service as a whole. But on the negative side of that, that is a lot of impact on staff to do those requests. Laura, our front desk person, logged in over 18,000 steps on, the first couple of days. And we've looked at the averages of all the people doing fitness trackers, and it's right around 15,000 steps. So, it's a lot of work to go and do all of the materials inside of the building, but we're really happy with that service and what we're providing so far. In total, we know that we've served over 300 unique families during this time. We've have some come, many people who have come, multiple times during our curbside service. So, that's really nice for us as well. And we really thank the foundation for that support, just kind of getting the word out and making sure that everybody knows, because we can push out digitally really well, but a lot of customers, just connect with the library by showing up, and that hasn't been an option for them at this time. Next slide. We do really take safety seriously. The library community has really wonderful, safety standards in place. We have tracking by material type and proper decontaminations for all of those things that are put through, both clinical, trial style information. And we know that all of the materials that we're returning to the public would have undetectable virus levels on them when we do so. You'll see this clean room we built in our, back room there, just so that we can properly decontaminate everything. Also, thanks to Chris's support, we've had, good PPE throughout this time period. A lot of libraries have had struggle, just getting the basic equipment you need, gloves and masks and things. But, we've had that straight through. So we've been able to provide really good service and, decontamination. Because the last thing we'd want is for anything in the library to be, actually carrying the virus or causing an infection in any way. So next slide. But the majority of our business growth has been through that digital service, just like you would note from development services. We have ebook and e-audio checkouts up by more than 30%, and our online card registrations, which were about roughly about 2% of our total card registrations, just a little bit of them, have now just become the normal card registrations. We have pretty similar card registration numbers compared with a previous time last year. In total, we're only off with our out-of-district card holders, the ones that would have to pay for renewal. We've lost some of those during this time, but our resident card holders are less than 1% off of this time last year. So people who are able to utilize the service, especially, in the service area, are really utilizing it and kind of keeping up with those new cards. And we're connecting with a lot of new people, during this time as well. I think especially as the pandemic wore on and you'd sort of work through your Netflix, we saw a lot of customers kind of coming to us for some new entertainment and, kind of finding good resources there. We have lots of, new digital resources that we've really bolstered up during this time. Everything from you can read, back issues of the Skagit Valley Herald to, online classes. And so that's been a really nice part of our service as well. Next slide. We are still doing summer reading, and we have been able to fully prep that program. It's kicking off July 1st. So just like every other year, you can sign up for summer reading. You can request a physical form through our curbside service, and we hope to soon distribute through the parks as well, that wonderful sign up for summer reading. With support from our various friends and local Skagit Valley consortium of libraries, we were able to make sure that we could give a free book to everyone who signs up while supplies last. That number is in excess of last year, so we should be able to handle all of the participants that we would normally get. And we also have an online component like we've been running for many years. So if you just want to sign up online and track your reading and participate that way as well, that is available. We've been really working in close partnership with the school district to try to figure out how to do as much as we can to kind of bridge that educational shortfall. The school district itself knows that it's, not been able to fully provide all of the educational needs, and they are worried about that gap coming into the next year. So anything that we can do to support that, through the interim is really important for our, kids in our community, because of the way that the school year sort of went to a sort of online learning platform towards the end of the year. We know that many people are going to be disconnected from learning, and anything we can do to really help that. Next slide. And along those lines, we are working on an agreement with the school district to actually provide cards for every person in the school district, every student in the school district. Kevin actually just got a copy of that agreement about 2 seconds before this meeting, so don't expect him to have reviewed it yet, and don't do that. But it's a really, I think, a great partnership, and one that the school district is actually going to pay a little bit of money for to support. So I think it will be a good, relationship for both of us to, provide cards for kids and have a little bit more access for everybody involved, especially as they go into that new hybrid school year, although no one knows exactly what it looks like. I think the library and sort of distance learning components will be a more important part of how the school district will provide education going forward. And next slide. And then I would like to highlight our digital programming. Here is a screenshot from our partnership with the police department. We had, police story times. There's actually 3 more that will premiere in July. So, that's really good. We've also had really good numbers on those, videos, over 1,000 views each for, our police story times. We've also done a lot of internal programming as well, story times and little STEM activities and art lessons. Although we've taken a little bit of a pause as we geared up for curbside, it was sort of all the energy we could do to just get that done with the staffing we had. But it will continue again in July, and I think it will be a really nice part of what we offer. It's also just a really new audience that we're engaging with. I think, long-term, what we all noticed is that that we are engaging with a different customer online than we do in the physical building. So we're sort of building a new audience there. And I would suspect that the library's, future going forward is just going to have a continued digital education and digital programming side to it. Maybe even offering sort of simulcast events, where we have an event in the building and one kind of simulcast online, because that audience is there and engaging with the material so far. So that's really nice for us as well. Next slide. Oh, and so just one last thing before I let you go. We know that the library, is, part of the city, and the city has many revenue shortfalls, coming their way, and we're trying to do our part. And so we've put in 7 grant applications so far, and we're, really doing as much as we can to kind of move forward, and support, with whatever opportunities come our way. Everything from supporting summer reading to, Wi-Fi grants, to economic, capital grants really geared at the library structure. So, we're just going to continue to put those in and try to build, just a little bit of extra revenue that way, and also support new programs if we can, kind of get funding for those things in place. I know that one of the things that we will be able to offer is little free libraries in the parks. Here in the next little bit, we did get that fully grant funded, and we have, a cool way that we think we can make them kind of innovative and not just like every box, on the block. So when those kind of debut, I'll tell you a little bit more about those as well. So that's all I have.
All right. Questions for Isaac?
Always educational and always fun, Isaac. Thank you very much for all you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. So last up tonight is our parks update. Jennifer Berner's our Parks and Enrichment Director. I know none of you have really met her yet because she took over right when we all went into lockdown. So I'm glad that she's here tonight to give you an update from that department. So I'm going to share her screen. I can pull this one up. And then I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Well, good evening,
All right.
everybody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. It's nice to finally see some faces and meet a few folks. It's been an interesting time to start, but it's always educational and always learning something new here. But wanted to give you kind of an update of what's going on in our Parks and Enrichment Services and just kind of let you know where we're at, what we're doing, what we're working on. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So one of the things we've been needing to do is come up with a reopening plan. One of the things that I'm participating in weekly is a call with all the other Parks and Recreation directors in Skagit County, Whatcom County, and Snohomish County. So once a week we do a Zoom call, and one of the things that we're trying to accomplish through this is making sure that all of us are kind of staying consistent with what's opening when in which phase, so that as people are traveling around in their communities, they are seeing that, oh, all the playgrounds are closed. It's not just in this community that they're closed. So it's been really educational and helpful to have that. And we continue to meet and just kind of talk about what challenges are coming up and how we're all doing it and brainstorming on it. So that's been very, very helpful. What's changed with us going to phase 2 is we now have our dog park open. So the dog park itself is open, but it's important to understand that the gate to Bakerview is still closed. We do not have the staffing capacity to be able to open and close, particularly close that gate right now. And so that gate is closed, but people can park on the perimeter and walk in, and the dog park is open. I have not heard any negative complaints to this point. A lot of calls on, is the dog park open? But we explained to them, you know, park on the perimeter and walk in, and yes, it is. And people seem to be doing that and thinking that that's excellent that it's open. The pickleball courts are, I know that was a project that started up and then it kind of had to go on a hiatus with the COVID, and then we were able to get it up going again once construction was able to happen. And we were able to get those pickleball courts completed in June, early part of June, and we've been able to get them opened up with phase 2. So what we have is 3 courts of the 6 with nets on them, and that's due to our guidance that we have to adhere to with phase 2 with outdoor recreation. The tennis courts are now open, the basketball courts are open, and the play fields are open for sports teams to practice, but there's specific guidelines that they need to adhere to. And so some of that is they have to come up with a return to play safety plan that we're asking them to run through the Skagit County Health. And we've got a contact up there that they can run their plan through. And once they do that, then they can get back to us and let us know that they're good to go. We've heard from a couple different organizations. They were thinking they wanted to come back in phase 2, but they have all said they're going to wait till phase 3 now, just due to some of the feedback that they've been getting, I guess, from parents and some of the reopening plan stuff that they have, guidelines that they have to adhere to. So we're working with them, and the restrooms are open. We've been able to open up the Bakerview Park restrooms and the Riverwalk restrooms. So we've had the Upper Hillcrest restrooms and Lions Park restrooms open, but with phase 2, we opened up 2 more. So what do we have to look forward to going to phase 3? We will be looking at fields will be opened up for rentals, facilities, picnic shelters will all be open for rentals. Those will all be within guidelines where it has to be 50 people or less. And there's some cleaning guidelines and things like that that we are looking at, and what we need to do as a staff and what we're going to need to require from the people renting the facilities. So we're working on all of those plans so they're ready to go. We're also going to be opening up the playgrounds. So we are doing all the inspections. I've asked the crew to go out and do a really strong inspection on all of the playgrounds so that by the time we get to phase 3, we know that they are safe and operational since they've been closed down for a period of time. So we're working on that. The office will be open to the public, but we'll have some limited hours. We only have one person in the office, one staff person. So we're gonna we'll be looking at what those hours are and then get that posted. And then Kiwanis Park will be opening up those restrooms come phase 3 as well. Any questions on the reopening plan as we know it? And this is a fluid document as things come down from the governor's office and changes happen. We change along with that. This is what we know right now based on the information that we have. And again, we've been getting great resources from all the other Parks and Recreation departments in the area, as well as our National Parks and Recreation organization has been there and sending out lots of information to help us as well. So some projects, exciting news with the Little Mountain parking lot project. So we were actually able to complete the paving of that project. You can see some of the pictures there, and the very last one there is of the completed paving of that parking lot. City staff is going to finish up the project. We have some signage and pavement markings and wheel stops and split rail fence and a couple things like that that we took out of the contract to be able to stay within the dollar amount that we needed to. And so staff will be finishing that up. They have about 2 more weeks of things that they need to button up with, and then staff will be able to go in and do the finishing touches. We're hoping to open up that parking lot sometime mid to late July. So that's really exciting news, especially going into the summer. And we all know Little Mountain has been being used just a whole lot right now, which is great that we're able to offer that to our community. The Bike Skills Center, so we've been working with Evergreen Alliance and they are back working on their project and they've submitted their guidelines that they're following to be out there working on the project. And the pickleball courts, as I expressed, those were completed early June. We've got the nets up and we're working with the pickleball group on getting some new signage for the front gate there and a donor recognition plaque. Give you an update on our operations. So we have right now at about a loss of 640 hours a week. So that's quite a bit of staff that we are down. So our park operations, we have about 240 hours that we are losing per week that we don't have that we would normally have to get the work done. This is our real busy time of year. It's our grow season right now. And so a lot is happening out in our parks. A lot of people are using our parks as well, which is great. It is what we want to see happening. It's just sometimes hard to stay on top of everything with everybody out using the parks and being down the number of staff that we are. So we're in the hiring freeze. So there's 40 hours a week that would have been a 7-month seasonal that we would have had on board, and we would have had 5 3-month seasonals. We also have the CWP operations. So that's about a loss of 280 hours a week that we are experiencing right now. We had to lay off one of the assistant CWP supervisor. So that's a loss of 40 hours a week. And then with the courts not up and operational, and just with COVID, when we are able to bring back some folks and start working in some teams, it's going to look very differently. People are going to have to drive themselves. We're not going to be transporting people in vans and things like that anytime soon. So we used to have 2 crews of about 8 people, and that would be about additional 30 hours a week of assistance that we are not seeing out in the parks right now as well. And then on the recreation and front office operations, we have a loss of 120 hours a week. We've had to lay off 3 full-time staff members, our recreation supervisor, our recreation volunteer coordinator, and our administrative assistant. So That's hence the little graphic there on the side and my comment down below. It's a time for innovation and teamwork. We've been pulling everybody together and saying, yes, this is our situation, but we can come through this. We've got to be innovative. We've got to work together as a team and still figure out how we can do the best we can to deliver those services to our community. So kind of keeping you in the know of what's going on. Summer activities, as many of you know, 4th of July celebration and the Children's Art Festival have been canceled. We are trying to keep some things up and operational for the summer. We are currently working with our library to do some joint programming activities, kind of virtual programming activities with the library. We've come up with 4 themed activities. And so kind of a virtual camp activities guide for parents and kids this summer that will at least provide something for parents to, you know, you'll have how-tos and videos and everything on how to do some of these activities with your family and with your kids. One thing we're also looking into is doing some contract camps with Skyhawks. So this allows us to, by contracting out, we don't have to do all of the hiring of staff and training of staff. They do all of that, and they're doing things that are virtual as well as in-person camp, following a variety of guidelines based on what phase we will be in. So they've given us their guidelines that they have been approved for. So it's something that we're going to be pushing out next week and sending out to our public to let them know these things will be available to them. And then just to kind of tag team back up with the library stuff that we're doing, our park staff has built the little libraries, the 4 little libraries that Isaac was talking to you about. And so we're going to look at where we're going to put those out in the parks, and then look at that's a way that we can utilize to get information out about the activities for the summer. We'll put some of that in the little libraries as well. So our fields out at the PUD office there, our current contract expires with that at the end of the year. So I've been in contact with them and we're negotiating a new contract. That contract is only going to be for 5 years. It used to be for 20, but they've got some things that are happening with that piece of property and that I'll update you on at a later date. But we are in that stage of negotiating a new contract. So at least for the next 5 years, we'll have use of those fields, which is really important because those are some of our key play fields for our sports, our youth sports programs and our adult sports programs. Volunteers, we are continuing to, where we can, work with volunteers. We had some projects go on at Lions Park, the Riverbend Loop Trail, and Kiwanis Park. And one of the things that we'll be working on is developing an Adopt a Park program so that we can really take heart in some of these folks that are calling saying they want to help out. And we have some guidelines in place on how we can get them in a program and have them helping us out there in the parks. And then with our city work program, we are hoping, we had a conversation with our prosecuting attorney last week, and it looks like we may be able to get something up and going sometime in August. It'll be some limited capacity, but at least we'll be able to get something up and going hopefully mid-August. A lot of that depends on the courts and our police department, who does a lot of the vetting of the folks that come into this particular program. Okay. So at this point, I'm open for any questions that you have. That's a good kind of, that little street sign there is probably what I experienced my first month on the job, but I feel like I'm going to be able to change that street sign pretty quickly. I've been getting up to speed on a lot of things and feel like we're coming together, pulling some stuff together over here.
Don't let Jennifer fool you. She has over 30 years of experience doing this job. It just is a COVID thing, right?
It is a COVID thing.
Jennifer, be welcome in our team.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have you over.
I agree. I was going to say, are you sure you did the right thing?
I have not had a second thought about it. It's just a new challenge, and I love the team here in Mount Vernon.
Awesome. I really especially love your presentation was great. I love the Adopt a Park program. I think that's a really awesome concept, and I hope it works out very well.
Thank you. I've had success with it at other cities that I've worked at, and it's a really good way to engage our community and get them to have ownership in their parks. And we have seen a really good outreach from folks right now just calling and wanting to, some of them like their yards are all weeded and all done. So how else can I help? So it's a great way to get them engaged.
All right, any other questions for Jennifer? Jennifer, do you want to just speak real quickly to, what people are going to see in the parks is, a little bit longer grass, or can you just say a little bit about the reduction in service and how you go about deciding that?
Certainly, yes. So one of the things that I did is when we knew what our staffing levels were going to do is I pulled our team together and we met for about 2.5 hours and we went through all of our parks, what it takes to make those parks operational and safe. So a big thing for me is making sure our parks are safe. The other piece of that is, we want to make sure they're as usable as possible. So let's take a look at where we could cut back, what we could cut back. So, but still stay safe and make sure that, we keep our parks operational. So we sat down, we talked that through, and then I met with the mayor and we kind of agreed on a variety of things that, yes, this is where some cutbacks will occur. So some of that's going to be, we've cut back on some of our mowing. We may not mow as often. So you may see the grass get a little longer. You may see some trailings because when we mow, usually if you keep the mow going, then you don't see the trailings because they just kind of fall down into the grass. But when it gets a little taller, that's when you see the buildup on the top of the grass. And so you might see some of that happening in your parks because we're not getting out there as often. Now, hopefully usually it depends on the weather, but sometime in June, July, August, our grass starts to go a little more dormant. And so we aren't having to mow as often. So then we won't see that as much, but it'll start to go a little more brown. One of the things we talked about too is that maybe we're not going to water as often to kind of help us with that maintenance piece. So we don't want it to die. So it's always that delicate balance of it going dormant, but not dying. So that's something that we will be monitoring as we go forward as well. We are not going to be opening all of our restrooms. So we're looking at the usability of our parks and which ones do we need to open and make sure that, with Lions Park, we needed something down there on the Riverwalk. And now we've got the riverfront restrooms open. We've got Baker View, which is another heavily used area open. So we're kind of edging in based on what facilities are open at what parks as to what restrooms we're going to open up. So that's one thing that we're going to be monitoring. You're also going to see some, like the spray park's not going to open up this summer most likely because I don't know that we're going to get to phase 4. And that's really when we can be safe with opening up the spray park. So that one is another one that we may not see open this summer. And so I know we've been fielding some calls on that, and it's really just educating people. And once you do, they get on board. So it's those kinds of things that you're going to see a difference. And I encourage you, if you have a question as to why something may not be maintained to the level that you normally would see it at, to please reach out and give me a call, and we can certainly address it. Along some of our trails, some of them might not get cut back as often as they used to be, but it is something we want to make sure for trail safety we maintain, but it might look a little more overgrown before we get to it. So those are the kind of things that you're going to see that are going to look a little different with your parks.
Okay, any questions for Jennifer? Okay, Well, thanks to all the directors. Just so council knows, all of the slides are in your iDrive in your packet, so you can look back at those if you need to for reference, and then certainly call the directors if you have any questions. So, okay, so that concludes our scheduled agenda items. Kevin, is there a need for an executive session this evening?
No.
All right then. With that, we will be adjourned at 7:34. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.